We've been getting some questions for first-time entrepreneurs. Why even create a company? Can't I just be a sole proprietorship instead of creating an LLC or another type of company? So in today's video, I want to go through the difference between a sole proprietorship versus an LLC. This is not tax advice. You've got to talk to a CPA if you're deciding between different tax structures and business entities. This is just for informational purposes, and I'm sharing experience that I've seen from our businesses as well as from speaking to franchisees and hundreds of franchise brands out there. So sole proprietorship is when an entrepreneur owns and operates an unincorporated business by himself or herself. So they're personally liable for the debts, any challenges in the businesses that occur. Think about someone that gets into a business opportunity like a Mary Kay, for example, and selling makeup. They might start with a sole proprietorship as they might just be making 4K, 5K. And then once they start making more money, create an LLC. It's the easiest structure to get started in operating, and it's common with all different types of contractors. So whether you're an Uber driver or kids selling lemonade or babysitter, generally going to be sole proprietorship. And then once you start making more money, say over 10K, you've got to really consider switching over to an LLC, if not before. So LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. LLCs are granted by individual states. LLCs have few requirements and are attractive because they're liability protection and potential tax savings. So it's not me, Patrick, doing business with you, selling you lemonade or selling you makeup. It's Patrick LLC. I represent Patrick LLC, but there's this company between us and I'm conducting business on the company's behalf. So that acts as a shield against debts, liabilities incurred by the business. And there are ways that you can break that shield, committing fraud. If people don't clearly know that you're representing the business and they think it's you that they're dealing with as an individual, there are some times that shield can be broken where you are actually liable for those debts and other liabilities. Benefits to an LLC: it protects the owner from most liabilities, limited requirements, tax advantages, flexible profit distributions if you have more partners, flexible management structure. You don't have to have shareholders or a board of director. It could just be you yourself that owns 100% of this business and you make all the decisions. Detailed operating agreement is a nice plus. So if you have business partners, you can clearly understand what the roles or responsibilities are. Also, if one of the partners wants to sell his interest in the business, how is that going to look? It should be in the operating agreement, quite detailed out. Some disadvantage: it can be a little expensive if you're just getting your feet wet in entrepreneurship to start up. If you do it yourself in Florida, I believe it's like $150 state registry. If you're going to work with an entity company, add another $150, $200, working with an accountant, add another $500 to all that. So it can be a bit expensive. I do recommend if you're doing a serious business where you do expect solid revenue, solid earnings, it's better just working with an accountant CPA up front, so you save time as well as potential costly mistakes down the line, but not having the entity set up correctly or choosing the right business structure. Other transfers of ownerships complicated, requires all owners to agree on shares being transferred or sold. This can create issues, disagreements among the owners. And then some states also charge an ongoing tax, franchise tax they call it, that you have to pay every year. And there's renewal costs as well, and just ongoing expenses for tax filings when you have an LLC. So open an LLC. We'll create more information on this. Choosing a company name, appointing a registered agent. That's basically an individual organization that accepts all the legal paperwork for the business entity. Filing certificate of organization, and all that needs to be filed with the Secretary of State's office in your state or whatever state you're opening the business. So it's a pretty straightforward process. You do it yourself. You can work with one of these entity startup companies, or you can have an accountant do it. It's going to depend on your risk profile and as well as what type of business you're setting up. There's some benefits, though, to having a sole proprietorship and not going the LLC path. So there's fewer registration fees. That's number one. It's tied directly to you as the individual. So there's fewer startup costs. It's an easy process to become a sole proprietor. The vast majority of businesses in the United States actually operate as sole proprietorships. These can be micro businesses, people just making $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 with their side hustle. This allows small businesses and individuals to avoid difficult business requirements. And number two, straightforward banking. There's generally no EIN number. It's just your social security number. So you can open up a checking account. Does not require a business checking account. And then you can make business expensive deposits from your personal bank account. So I personally would like to have everything separated, but some people, especially as they're starting out, they can just operate with their existing personal checking account or open up a second one for that side hustle. And it's just more straightforward, easier business process. You don't need that EIN number, that employee identification number. It's not required. An EIN is basically an identification number with the IRS that allow wages to be tracked. Sole proprietorship, if you don't have employees and you don't plan to be bringing on employees, you don't have to go through that process of getting an EIN. There are some big disadvantages. As I mentioned, number one, no liability protection. It's you doing business with someone else. Patrick's selling cookies to you. If you get food poisoning, you could sue Patrick. You're not suing my entity that sold you those cookies. Borrowing challenges can be more complicated getting financing. Banks largely want to lend to serious businesses that aren't just individuals with a side hustle. They want to see credit history of that business, prior tax returns, as well as the final point, selling the business is going to be a pain because you can't sell the entity together. You're selling asset by asset, which is common practice for business sales that are at a small size, but it does make the whole due diligence process a lot harder, and it's going to make it more complicated for you as a seller as well as the buyer of that business if it's set up as a sole proprietorship. So artists, freelance writers, local mom and pop shops even sometimes are just sole proprietorships. These businesses typically only bring in a few $1,000s on an annual basis. And then LLCs, on the other hand, can range from a small business that does $5K of revenue all the way up to Google. Yeah, you got that. Google's parent company, Alphabet, is a publicly traded corporation, INC, Inc. Google itself is an LLC. So you have companies making $5K in revenue or even $0 in revenue that are LLC, all the way up to Google making billions of dollars every year. So it is a pretty flexible business entity. If you're making more than $10,000 on a side hustle, even $5K, definitely got to sync with an accountant. Hopefully you have done before. And before you do anything, talk to an accountant. There are accountants that provide at least a complimentary consultation. And then if you decide to engage their services, they'll do the work to decide what business entity is right for you to set up, whether that's sole proprietorship, an LLC, or maybe a different type of business structure. I hope you found this video informational. Again, this is not tax advice. I'm just sharing what I've learned looking at these two different business routes, as well as talking from personal experience and then seeing what franchisees have done in the marketplace. Hope you like this video. Shoot me an email at patrick@vettedbiz.com if you have any questions about today's video.